Our great nation is shrinking and we need someone to pay the pensions, so... You.
Yes?
You need to get pregnant right now.
Says who?
Well, fascists as well as communist dictatorships and more recently, Silicon Valley tech bros. Don't you want to support your nation?
But what if I don't want babies?
That is out of the question. Why wouldn't you want babies? Also, who cares if you want them? Aren't you merely a woman?
I am indeed a woman, a totally legitimate form of a human, and I don't want a government to tell me when and how to have babies.
Fertility is going down. So is this something to worry? Maybe not, Maybe it is. It depends on what perspective you have. For the environment, it's maybe good not to have so many babies, but as a personal preferences, you might want to have more babies, or for a pension scheme, it's good to have many, many babies.
Increasing the share of father days in parental leave packages, it actually had an anti-natalist effect, unfortunately, because the more time fathers spent with their kids, they realized they didn't want to do childcare, and then they ended up having fewer children. And I'm definitely not saying this.
Sorry, that sounds horrendous.
Yeah,
they
I know.
just realized they don't want these kids around, any more of them.
For certain men who have this family image as a status symbol, it is good for men's health, and it also is a sign for having higher income. But for women, it's rather a disadvantage still.
Hello, welcome back to the Standard Time Talk Show. I'm your host, Réka Kinga Pop.
And I'm Daniela Nivaso, the writer of the show.
On this program, we discuss European culture, society, and politics with guests from all over the world. We release new episodes every second week, so don't miss out. Hit the subscribe button and set 5 to 7 alarms so you never miss an episode. By the way, you can also watch the show or listen to it in a podcast format on Display Europe. And don't forget to turn on the subtitles in one of the 15 languages Display offers. Have you given birth this week? Not yet? What have you been doing all this time? Across the globe, developed nations are freaking out because of the decrease in birth rates, and this fuels ever fiercer culture wars and some very gendered propaganda. Quote, since the collapse of socialism, demographic change has emerged as one of the biggest Rashomons of contemporary societies, especially in Central and Eastern Europe. End quote, says Christian Fidanowski, a doctoral candidate in social policy and demography at the University of Oxford. Indeed, birth rates have been steadily decreasing across the world for the first time since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. Russia and China have been struggling with its effects for decades, but much of Europe and countries like India and South Korea have recently started to contend with this phenomenon. In the past 2 centuries, since 1804, the global population has grown from 1 billion to an astonishing 8 billion people, thanks in large part to greater agricultural productivity and medical advancements. World population growth hit its peak at 2.1% annually in 1968, but has since slowed to 1.1%. So now the demographic concern has shifted from a fear of overpopulation to a concern with hemorrhaging polities. Pronatalism is on the rise once again. It's a favorite pet theory shared by so many, including both fascist and communist dictatorships and, more recently, Silicon Valley tech oligarchs. They are advocating for having more children in order to increase the number of people in a country, with very weird undertones. Unfortunately, this political drive often takes the form of restrictive policies, for instance, the opposition to effective birth control and abortions. It often also has strong racial overtones and sometimes class implications, like Elon Musk specifically advocating for wealthy people to have more kids. Of course, it's not like the Earth is running out of humans. We're more numerous than at any time throughout the history of our species. Yet, in a political and economical mindset tuned to the idea of perpetual growth and measuring national economies against one another, there is rising resistance against immigration, even when our economies are built on immigrant labor, quite like in Europe and specifically the European Union. Now, despite the questionable tech bro bullcrap, there are good reasons to be concerned. Our economies, especially in welfare states, are built on a model where active generations of wage earners provide for their contemporary dependents, through an intricate system of taxes and dues that sustain healthcare systems, schools and pensions, and sometimes even paid parental leave, the most extreme version of an active holiday anyone can ever take. Here's political scientist Ivan Krastev talking about population decline in South Korea.
In South Korea, they have a reproduction rate which is under 1%. Obviously, something is dramatically wrong with the South Korean marriage and so on. But as a result of it, if they're not going to change the trend and if they're not going to be migration, they're going to lose half of its population in the next 20 years. So now imagine the economic, political, and security implications. This is a country where kind of the biggest military divide which remained from the Cold War is still there. Can you imagine that you're a leader in a country and you know that basically in 20 years you're going to lose half of your population? I'm saying this because when you go and start seeing this, you start to see totally different reasons why governments are doing what they're doing.
You can listen to Krastev's conversation in full with Mirjana Tomic at the Presa Club Concordia on the link up in the card here and in the video description. So, is there a way to remodel our economies so that fewer people can provide for more dependents? Not only are birth rates decreasing, so is the relative taxation of the highest earners across much of the globe. Are we ever going to entertain the idea of maybe taxing the rich? Oh, hell no. Let's blame women instead. Yeah, some way, somehow, it always finds a way to make it all about the control of the female body. One interesting characteristic of this discourse is that it tends to focus very heavily on gender norms, societal expectations, and put a lot of pressure on the people who dare not utilize their wombs for reproduction. Why is it so centered on them? For societies that widely promote the idea of the nuclear family, I would expect to see howling packs of eligible bachelors roaming the streets in search for a lifelong mate to have and raise babies with, and yet this doesn't seem to be the most successful calling card on Tinder. But why are we having fewer babies, let's say in Austria or Japan, in Washington, D.C., even in Luxembourg? Okay, maybe not in Luxembourg, but only because they have a very positive immigration-emigration rate, but you get the point. But seriously, why are the people with wombs choosing to have fewer babies? Oh, they are career-focused workaholics? Believe it or not, someone made the foolish mistake of asking them. Two sociologists, or as I like to call them, sociologists, Claudia Rahnfeld and Ann-Kathrin Heuschkel, decided to make a deep study on the subject and found out something interesting. So drumroll please. And I quote, "The decision to become childless is made much more on the basis of individual motives and not because of the framework conditions, which was previously assumed. The main reasons for women are a desire for self-realization, free time, and more freedom. These motives are far ahead of other motives such as the ecological footprint." End quote. Ha! Free time. I raised 3 awesome yet tiresome children, and I'm not sure I remember exactly what free time was. It's been a while. Yet, the level of freedom and free time varies wildly across social strata and societies. For instance, where universal childcare is available, where public education and healthcare systems are dependable, versus where parents have to spend a significant proportion of their income just to be able to go to work to have any income whatsoever while somebody watches their kids. We have an episode on kindergartens, my favorite things in life. Maybe you want to check this out. Link up here in the card and down in the video description. It's important to note a surprising fact, however. According to new research, and despite all the shame and blame, it seems that childless women have not only been ever-present and important pillars of our communities and wider society, but also rather numerous across the past century. For example, in Austria, they constituted 29.1% of the population in 1900. Power to the antis! Having children or not having them is such a deeply intimate and personal question that many legitimately want policymakers to take a step back and instead of exerting pressure, maybe rather provide circumstances so that the babies people want to have can actually be born and raised, respecting people's individual lives and decisions. I was among the first ones in my age group to have a kid and have often been asked since whether I found it worth it. It's a weird question, but I try to take this seriously because it's asked seriously. After all, the last thing an uncertain young adult needs is a lecture from someone who hasn't slept through a night for years. So, my very sincere answer has always been, no, it's not worth it. If we run the calculus on invested time, energy, and resources, having children in our societies is not a profitable investment for the individual. I love them, and I wouldn't want to live without children. But if you don't have the motivation, the personal motivation, the same tally for you may never add up. I believe that our kids don't owe us allegiance or gratitude or even their time, to be honest. Their lives are theirs, and our joy in raising them is just a side product. A marvelous side product, but not the point of the exercise. I know this sounds grim, but it's at least an honest response, which allows you to try and make your own choices and explore what you want, as opposed to what would be kind of, like a financial irrational choice. And who knows, you may be an enthusiastic parent someday, or you may end up the best auntie or uncle for an extremely thankful bunch of kids and their tired parents who appreciate you being there for them. And you may enjoy not having to be there for them all of the time. But these factors vary wildly across societal positions, individual wealth, gender, and in a gender division of labor, so many factors. We have 3 experts here with us to talk about pronatalism, population decline, and childcare. Dr. Regina Fuchs heads the Population Directorate at Statistics Austria. This is where statistics on demographics, health, the labor market, education, living conditions, research, and digitalization are compiled. She is also responsible for the Science Center with the Austrian Microdata Center. Christian Fidanovsky studied politics and East European studies at University College London and Russian, Eurasian, and East European studies at Georgetown University. He's a doctorate candidate in social policy and demography at the University of Oxford. Dr. Gerlinde Maurer, senior scientist at the Department of Sociology at the University of Vienna, Austria, primarily works in research on gender and family, empirical sociology, health, and social inequalities, as well as critical masculinities. Let's get to this.